The most beloved animated movies of all time are secretly horror stories? Not horror like monsters under your bed. No, something far worse. The kind that twists your stomach at a school lunch table. The kind that makes a grown adult freeze in a parking lot, unable to move, because they are absolutely terrified of messing everything up. Pixar has been doing this for 30 years. 30 years of rapping, soul-crushing, bone-deep fear inside beautiful animation, incredible music, and characters so lovable you never noticed what was really happening beneath the surface. But today, we are pulling back the curtain. We are going character by character, film by film, from 1995 all the way to 2025. And we are exposing the hidden terror that every single one of these iconic characters was carrying. This is not a list of jump scares. This is a psychological autopsy of some of the most secretly terrified characters ever put on screen. Woody Toy Story, 1995. Let's start at the beginning. 1995, a cowboy doll on a bedroom shelf. On the surface, Woody looks like the confident one, the leader, the toy who has it all figured out. He gives the speeches, he organizes the missions, he tells everyone else to calm down. But here's what Pixar was actually telling you from frame one. Woody is terrified. Not of heights, not of the dark. Woody is terrified of becoming irrelevant. Watch his face the moment Andy opens Buzz Lightyear's box. Watch the way Woody's eyes go wide. Watch the way his jaw tightens. That is not jealousy. That is pure, undiluted, existential dread. The dread of a person who has built their entire identity around being needed, and suddenly the world has moved on without asking permission. Woody's fear is one of the most adult fears Pixar has ever animated. It is the fear of being replaced. The fear that your best years are behind you. The fear that love is not permanent, that affection expires, that one day you will wake up and the person who needed you most will not need you anymore. They strip every layer of that cowboy confidence away until all that is left is a terrified toy whispering into the dark, "What if Andy forgets me?" Woody's entire arc across 4 films is one long battle against that single terrifying question. Buzz Lightyear Toy Story, 1995. Buzz walks in looking like confidence personified. He believes he is a real space ranger. He believes he has a mission, a purpose, a destiny larger than any bedroom. And then comes the moment that broke millions of children in 1995 without them fully understanding why. Buzz sees the commercial. He sees himself on television, a toy, mass-produced, sold in boxes. The horror on Buzz's face in that scene is not sadness. It is the horror of identity collapse, the terror of realizing that everything you believed about yourself was a constructed illusion, that your purpose was invented, that your heroism is plastic. Buzz Lightyear, the most confident character in the film, spends the entire second and third act of Toy Story in a psychological freefall. He tries on a tea set and pretends to be a different character because facing the truth of who he is feels unbearable. That is not comedy. That is a character who is secretly, completely shattered. Marlin, Finding Nemo, 2003. If Woody represents the fear of irrelevance, Marlin represents something even more paralyzing, the fear of the world itself. Marlin watched his entire family get destroyed in the opening minutes of Finding Nemo. His wife, his eggs, everything, gone in seconds, and Pixar does not let you forget it. Because every single choice Marlin makes for the rest of that film is a direct response to that opening trauma. He does not let Nemo swim. He talks non-stop about dangers. He calculates risks. He hovers. He smothers. But here's the thing most people miss. Marlin's terror is not irrational. That is what makes it so devastating. He is not a weak character who cannot cope. He is a character who has genuinely seen the worst happen, who survived it, and who is now absolutely certain that if he relaxes for even one moment, the worst will happen again. Marlin's fear response is medically accurate. That is textbook hypervigilance following catastrophic loss. And Pixar gave it to a cartoon clownfish and made an entire generation of kids understand it before they had the words to describe it. His terrified face when Nemo swims toward the boat is not overreaction. It is the face of a father who has already lived through the ending where he does not make it in time. Mike Wazowski Monsters, Incorporated 2001. Mike Wazowski is funny. Mike Wazowski is loud. Mike Wazowski has one giant eye and is probably the most quotable character in the entire Pixar library. Mike Wazowski is also deeply, quietly terrified that he is not enough. The entire setup of Monsters, Incorporated is built around a culture of performance. Scarers are ranked, numbers are posted publicly. The best scarers are celebrities, the worst are invisible. And Mike, despite years of work, despite being Sully's best friend and personal trainer and strategist, is never the one on the poster. Watch Mike's face when the new commercial goes up and Sully is front and center. Watch how quickly Mike turns that hurt into a joke. Watch how efficiently he smothers that flash of pain. That is a character who learned very early that the dream he is chasing might not be built for someone who looks like him. His fear is not dramatic. It does not come with a panic attack or a chase sequence. It lives in the small moments, the moments where he almost lets himself want something and then immediately takes it back. That is the most terrifying kind of fear, the kind you have learned not to name. Dashpar the Incredibles, 2004. Dashpar is 10 years old and faster than any human being alive. He should be untouchable. But Dash lives under a rule that rewires his entire psychology. Hide what you are, shrink yourself, disappear. The scene that reveals everything is in the classroom. When Dash puts a tack on the teacher's chair and the teacher tries to catch him on a hidden camera, and Dash's dad laughs, and then immediately stops himself because they are not allowed to be who they are. Dash's fear is the fear of self-expression, the terror that being fully himself will destroy everything his family has built. A 10-year-old boy who runs faster than sound is afraid to run. Think about that for a moment. The suppression of Dash's power is not just a superhero metaphor. It is a deeply accurate portrait of children who are told that their most natural, most electric, most authentic qualities are dangerous. Children who learn to flatten themselves to fit a world that cannot handle the full version of who they are. When Dash finally runs on that island, when he skims across the water and lets out that scream of pure joy, that is not just a cool action scene. That is the release of years of secret, suffocating fear. WALL-E, 2008. WALL-E does not speak much. He communicates in beeps and tilts of the head, and he is one of the most emotionally transparent characters Pixar has ever created. WALL-E is terrified of being alone. He has been alone for 700 years. He has built his world around collected objects, a pet cockroach, a worn VHS tape of a movie he has watched so many times. He knows every word. He has constructed an entire emotional life from scraps because the alternative, feeling the weight of 7 centuries of silence, is too much to carry. When Eve arrives, WALL-E's terror shifts. Now, he is not afraid of being alone. He is afraid of losing her. Watch how he follows her. Watch how he reaches for her hand with the same desperate tenderness of someone who knows exactly how much it costs to be left. WALL-E is a love story, but underneath the love story is a survival story. A small robot on a dead planet, terrified every single day that this is all there is. Animated horror script, pronunciation conversion. Carl Fredricksen Up, 2009. We need to talk about the first 10 minutes of Up. Pixar took the concept of grief and compressed it into a montage so emotionally efficient, it has been used in psychology classrooms, grief counseling sessions, and countless conversations about loss. Without a single word of dialogue, they showed you an entire life, a love story, a loss, and a man who survived all of it and did not know what to do next. Carl Fredricksen is terrified that his life meant nothing. That is the fear beneath the grumpiness, beneath the refusal to leave the house, beneath the balloons and the floating adventure. Carl Fredricksen is a man who built his entire identity around a promise he made to the woman he loved, and she died before he could keep it. And now he is left with a house full of memories and a gnawing terror that he spent his whole life preparing for something that never arrived. His fear is quieter than most on this list. It does not announce itself. It just sits in the corner of every scene, in the way he touches Ellie's chair, in the way he talks to her picture. That is what real grief-driven fear looks like, and Pixar put it in a film marketed to children. Merida Brave, 2012. Brave is often underrated in the Pixar canon, and part of the reason is that its central terror is one that is harder to package into a clear visual metaphor. Merida is terrified of becoming her mother. Not because her mother is evil, not because her mother is wrong, but because Merida watches Queen Eleanor and sees a cage that looks exactly like a crown. She sees a woman who has swallowed every wild impulse, every inconvenient desire, every honest emotion, and turned herself into a symbol rather than a person. And Merida is terrified that if she follows the path laid out for her, she will disappear into that symbol too. She will become queen. She will be composed and correct and perfectly positioned. And somewhere inside that perfection, the girl who rides horses and shoots arrows and yells into the wind will simply cease to exist. That is not teenage rebellion, that is self-preservation. Merida's fear is the fear of erasure, and Pixar frames it against the backdrop of ancient Scotland, because that kind of fear is ancient. Arlo the Good Dinosaur, 2015. The Good Dinosaur is perhaps the purest distillation of fear as a character trait in the entire Pixar catalog. Arlo is not brave. Arlo is not secretly powerful. Arlo does not have a hidden talent that saves the day. Arlo is just afraid, constantly, visibly, unremarkably afraid. He is afraid of the dark. He is afraid of the river. He is afraid of bugs. He is afraid of the storm. He is afraid of being wrong and of being laughed at and of letting his family down. He is, in almost every scene for the first half of the film, the least heroic version of himself. And that is exactly why The Good Dinosaur is brave, not Arlo, the film. Because Pixar made a movie about a character who does not magically overcome fear, who does not reach a moment where fear just disappears and confidence floods in. Arlo is afraid in the final scene too. He is afraid and he goes anyway. He shakes and he moves forward. He trembles and he chooses. That is not a superhero arc. That is the truest, most honest portrait of courage Pixar has ever committed to screen. And it is wrapped around a little green dinosaur who cannot stop being scared. Fear Inside Out, 2015. Inside Out is a film that personifies every core human emotion, and yet the character named Fear is, counterintuitively, one of the most overlooked in the ensemble. Fear never gets a spotlight moment. He does not have a character arc. He does not save the day. He panics, he spirals, he throws himself on the ground, he dramatically overestimates every possible danger, from clowns to broccoli to social embarrassment. Fear represents the part of all of us that runs threat simulations all day, every day, on everything. Fear is the voice that says, "But what if something goes wrong?" Fear is the mental rehearsal of every possible disaster. Fear is the boy who woke up the night before the first day of school and could not sleep because the cafeteria was new, and what if there was no one to sit with? The problem is when fear gets too much control of the console, when the alert system starts running the whole operation. And by placing fear inside the mind of an 11-year-old girl navigating a cross-country move, Pixar made something profound. They made anxiety visible. They gave it a purple, twitchy, spectacular face, and millions of children saw that face and thought, "Oh, that is what is happening inside me." Ian Lightfoot Onward 2020. Ian Lightfoot is 16 years old. His father died before he was born. He has never thrown a party. He has a list in his notebook of things he wants to do with his dad if he ever gets the chance, and it is heartbreaking because it includes things like, "Teach me to drive, come to one of my games." Just hear his voice. Ian is crippled by fear of failure, but the specific shape of that fear is important. Ian does not just fear failing at magic, he fears failing at becoming a person. He has grown up with this weight of an absent father, this gap in his story, and he has convinced himself that if he could just get those 24 hours with his dad, he would finally know how to be himself. His fear of social situations, his inability to assert himself, his paralysis at the thought of doing anything that might go wrong, all of it circles back to that core belief: I do not know how to be a person. The moment in Onward that breaks you is when Ian realizes that the person who taught him to parallel park, who scared away the bullies, who stayed up late with him, was not some magical version of his dad. It was his brother, it was Barley, and it was Ian himself. His terror was never really about magic, it was about deserving to exist. Anxiety, Inside Out 2, 2024. If fear was the underdog of Inside Out, anxiety is the main antagonist of its sequel, and she deserves a moment all her own. Anxiety is not fear. That distinction is critical, and Pixar makes it deliberately. Fear is reactive. Fear responds to immediate threats. Fear says, "That clown looks suspicious." Anxiety is a planner. Anxiety runs 10,000 simulations of futures that have not happened yet. Anxiety builds entire architectures of worst-case scenarios and then lives inside them as if they are already real. Anxiety says, "What if I am not good enough? What if I make the wrong choice? What if the version of myself that people think they love is not the real me? What if they find out?" Inside Out 2 gives Riley a full anxiety spiral during a hockey camp, and it is one of the most accurate depictions of a teenage anxiety attack ever put to screen. The way the beliefs stack up, the way each new fear validates the previous one, the way anxiety speeds up, builds a wall, locks out the other emotions, and genuinely believes she is helping. Anxiety is not the villain because she is evil. She is the villain because she loves Riley so much she cannot stop protecting her, even from things that do not need protecting against. Characters from Elemental 2023. Ember Lumen is not afraid of fire. She is fire, but she is terrified of what she will cost her family if she becomes herself. Her father, Wade, built a shop in a new city from nothing for her. Her family sacrificed their comfort, their home, their identity, and Ember carries that sacrifice like a stone tied around her neck. She is afraid that if she chooses a different life, she is saying that their sacrifice was not enough, that everything they gave up was given for a person who turned around and walked away. That fear is so specific and so culturally loaded that it hit different communities in different ways. First-generation immigrant families recognized Ember's terror immediately, the weight of inherited sacrifice. The guilt of wanting something your parents could not want for themselves. The terror of being the reason that everything they built might not matter. Ember Lumen is afraid of her own freedom, and that is one of the most quietly devastating things Pixar has ever animated. Looking back, the pattern Pixar built. 30 years of films. And when you lay them all out, when you look at every character on this list, a pattern emerges that is almost too deliberate to be accidental. The fear of not being enough. Woody fears he is not enough for Andy. Buzz fears he is not enough to be real. Ember fears she is not enough to justify her family's sacrifice. That is Pixar's great hidden thesis. That is the emotional engine underneath 30 years of popcorn and tears and songs and merchandise. What is on the other side is always the same thing too. Connection, belonging, being seen by someone who stays anyway. Here is the thing about Pixar's secretly terrified characters that nobody really talks about. They do not fix the fear. The fear does not go away. But the characters learn to move anyway. They learn that fear is not a stop sign. They learn that terror is not the same as danger. They learn that you can be completely, authentically, genuinely afraid and still make the choice that changes everything. That is why Pixar has been making children cry for 30 years. Not because their films are sad, but because their films are true. And sometimes the most powerful thing a story can do is look directly at your fear, give it a name, sit down next to it, and say, yeah, me too. But watch what happens next.